Hello, Player One. Welcome to the Gaming History Club. My name is Gabby.
Hello, and I'm JP. Since the release of ChatGPT on the 30th of November 2020, interest, investment, and growth in AI has boomed enormously. But AI history can be traced back far to the 1950s. Let's find out in this episode what exactly is AI in video games and how did we get here?
So, Player One, some early video games heroes directly influenced and helped shape AI, such as Bruce Baumgart, the first ever esports champion, who won the Intergalactic Space War Olympics back in 1972, taking place where he studied Stanford University's Artificial Intelligence Laboratory. By the way, this might be the only Olympics I'm interested in.
Yeah, the Intergalactic Space War Olympics. Hell yeah. But obviously Bruce
Yes.
Baumgart, like that is just a piece of the man that is Bruce Baumgart. Like he's like a super interesting person, right?
Yep.
Including, I just want to mention again, even though we talked about it before, Bruce also formed part of Team Overbot, competing in the first and second DARPA Grand Challenge in 2004 and 2005, a competition where teams design autonomous, meaning self-driving, vehicles to complete a course across the Mojave Desert over 100 miles long. So yes, he is very much also a shaper of AI.
But yeah, if you want to delve deeper into that, by the way, check out our other episode, Control Alt Defeat History of Esports.
Yes.
AI in video games, like so many other things that's tech related, share deep connection. Look no other than Microsoft naming their AI assistant Cortana. Well, back then, I guess, because now it's called Copilot. But that's directly after our companion in the Halo series. And of course, AI is also explored in gaming narratives like Detroit Become Human. It literally is about AI.
Yeah, AI is, in regards to video games, it's inside of the games themselves. It
Yep.
helps to make the games, and there's also other stuff in how AI now affects video games directly.
Yeah, and some of the earliest applications of AI were in video games, as they're the perfect context to test out relatively basic and simple rules.
Video games have actually always been on the cutting edge of technology for as far as we've had like digital computers, because what better way to test computers and what you can do with them, how
Mhm.
to make them better, than, yeah, adding some games to it.
So let's get really into it, right? AI is a technical subject matter. We're going to keep it light and interesting. Well, hopefully interesting, but we definitely want to keep it light. So don't worry if you're not a huge computer nerd. Let's take a step back, start from the ground up, and clarify how this all fits together. As usual, though, we should clearly define AI because artificial intelligence is a term that has been used quite liberally to a range of concepts and applications. So, first, let's take a look at two levels of AI, what's called weak and strong AI, to understand gaming AI and AI in general a little bit better. So, strong AI, this strong AI is typically what is meant by quote unquote real artificial intelligence. It's what you usually perceive when you hear AI. It's the ultimate goal and challenge of computer scientists. And there are some concepts that fall under this strong AI category. The first one is artificial general intelligence, or what we call AGI, which has the ability to apply intelligence to any problem rather than just one specific problem, at least as well as a human can. The second one is superintelligence or AI singularity. This is what we usually are quite afraid about when we talk about AI because, yeah, this is the machine with vastly superior intelligence to an average human being, a new level of intelligence that humans can't achieve. A machine that can make itself even more intelligent and much faster than humans could improve it.
There's people who are very scared of this happening and also looking forward to it incredibly.
Yeah, there are two camps of this, right? Definitely. I mean, I guess this is where AI is becoming the limitation of AI itself, right?
Yeah, it's not up to our own brains anymore. His is already just as good, maybe a little bit better already, and then that will get better and better and much faster than us, and it will
Yeah.
learn how to make itself even better, much quicker than before. And I think that's where that singularity term comes from then.
Yeah, that's true. And the third concept under this strong AI is that artificial consciousness, a machine that has a subjective conscious experience, sentience, a mind, and is self aware, just like human.
Yeah, I wonder if you could have a super intelligent AI that doesn't have a consciousness. I think that's a question for another podcast, really.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to explore, isn't it? Yeah. Let's get into the second one, which is weak AI, or what we call narrow AI. I guess this is technically where we're in at the moment. It's limited to a specific or narrow area or application. So, what separates weak AI from strong AI, most importantly, are like two things. It may perform a specific, narrow task much better and faster than a human could, but not all possible tasks a human could carry out. So, for example, the last time a human beat a top performing machine at chess was on 21st November 2005, beaten by Ukrainian chess grandmaster Ruslan Ponomaryov. So, that same AI wouldn't be able to even count to 10 if you asked it to. So, it can perform some specific tasks better, but not all tasks. Second, most importantly, right, it also does not have a human like consciousness, but it can simulate one and may even be able to fool a human into thinking that it does.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably quite easy, depending on the context. Yeah, so like a robot talking like a human, no, definitely not. Even if there was AI, but if you're writing with someone, like just
Yes.
messaging,
Uh-huh.
yeah, AI could fool me any day. Of course it could.
Yeah, that's very true. That's probably why, right? All current AI technology is weak AI. This includes gaming AI, ChatGPT, generative image, video, music, or even self driving cars, your companion, Siri, Alexa, anything, social media newsfeed, how it's suggesting based on algorithms, Amazon suggested purchases, Google search engine results. So basically, what we have in our day to day life right now.
Yes,
But it's not going to be Gaming History Club without delving more into the history itself, is it?
we didn't come here to talk about algorithms, player one. Let's briefly gloss over the history of AI, and then quickly moving forward, we'll stick to what we came here for video games. The history of the concept of AI actually begins in antiquity, with myths, stories, and rumors, artificial beings with the intelligence of master craftsmen. For example, the myth of Talos, a giant robot made of bronze who acted as the protector for the island of Crete. If this surprises you, by the way, you may also be surprised to know that the oldest analog computer, the Antikythera mechanism, is dated to around 0 to 200 years BC. It's an ancient Greek device that could be used to predict the positions of stars, eclipses, and track the Olympic Games decades in advance. Philosophers then try to describe the process of human thinking as the mechanical manipulation of symbols. It's actually a little bit terrifying how old that comes back to. Yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, they did definitely have a very basic understanding of a mechanical computer.
Yeah,
Yeah, they did think of like, things that aren't human but look like humans, made
yeah,
out of stuff, move around by themselves and think. Yeah, absolutely surprising. But in terms of our modern concept of AI, it wasn't until the time just before, during, and after the Second World War. This was thanks to massive scientific and technology breakthroughs. Basically, what happened, there was around four ideas which all perfectly complemented each other to create this idea of an electronic brain. And you can really see why when you look at each of these four, and with our like kind of modern, general understanding of technology, this absolutely makes sense. So first you have research into and discovery of neurology, showing that the brain was neurons just pulsing on and off really quickly. You got cybernetics that describes the control and stability in electrical networks. You've got information theory, which describes digital signals. And finally, Alan Turing's theory of computation, which proved any form of computation could be described digitally. And so we see how all of these things fit together to now have this idea, this vague idea of an electronic brain. And Alan Turing was among the first people to seriously investigate the possibility of machine intelligence and circulated a now lost first ever paper in the field of AI.
Yes, so you mentioned Alan Turing, right? Though not a game, our gaming AI brief history should actually start with Alan Turing because he invented imitation game, now better known as the Turing test. No, not the movie. I can see your face, JP. No, it's not. Yeah, so the movie imitation game is not actually talking about the imitation game that he invented because the imitation game was introduced by Alan Turing at the University of Manchester, UK. It proposes a game whereby a machine could convince a human that it is in fact intelligent. Since Turing introduced his test, it has been both highly influential and widely criticized, and it has become an important concept in the philosophy of AI itself.
Which is probably the sad reason they stopped calling it the imitation game and now it's the Turing test. So it sounds like a scientific
Yes,
test. Game would have been just fine. But hey, that's at least we can get to talk about it because it is a game.
it is a game, that's true. It's argued that OpenAI's ChatGPT and Google's Lambda have effectively been able to beat the Turing test. In fact, in June 2022, Google engineer Blake Lemoine claimed that Lambda was sentient, although he was heavily rejected and Google even placed Lemoine on leave. So take it as you will. We don't know if it's true or not.
They tried to distance himself from him as much as possible, which is really difficult to do if he's an employee there.
Yeah. Oh, well, but anyway, I remember that made it big to the news back in 2022.
Now, finally, player one, here come the video games. We are finally here. One of the first examples of AI in gaming, and some of the first computer programs ever written, even, are a computerized version of NIM, made in 1951. So, NIM is a strategy game that's also been played since ancient times. The goal is for two players to take turns removing objects from piles under certain rules. The goal either to be the last one to take an object or avoid being the last to take an object. It's often played with matchsticks, so if you ever put
Hmm.
matchsticks in a pile, you've likely played them. Also, Dietrich Gunther Prinz created the first chess program also in 1951, having learned how to use Manchester University's Mark I computer from seminars that included Alan Turing. But Dietrich was also taught by science giants Albert Einstein and Max Planck in Berlin. But due to Jewish relatives, he had to flee Germany and became a British citizen in 1947. Arthur Samuel was yet another pioneer in gaming AI. Using Manchester's Mark I computer again, he created a program that could play checkers. And although not as complex as a game of chess, Arthur Samuel's checkers takes the crown, as his checkers game was among the world's first ever self-learning programs. By 1955, John McCarthy finally coins the word artificial intelligence during a workshop at Dartmouth. Arthur Samuels would coin the term machine learning in 1959 during a speech he gave about teaching machines to play games. Chess AI made history in 1997, beating chess grandmaster Garry Kasparov, competing versus IBM's Deep Blue. It wasn't a flawless victory though. Out of 6 games, Kasparov won 2 and drew once, but Deep Blue drew once and won 3.
But if we're going to early arcade video games, they didn't really make much use of AI technology, despite being made almost 2 decades after the initial breakthroughs at university computers. Games like Pong, for example, were not based on microprocessor computer architecture that we're familiar with today, so there's not much AI that can be implemented there.
It was just big light bulbs actually inside the arcade cabinet going on and off.
Yeah, so that's quite different, isn't it? But it was the golden age of arcade games that popularized AI, with titles Space Invaders from 1978, with the increasing difficulty levels and distinct movement patterns. Also, we can't forget Pac-Man introduced the ghost enemies, with each had their own personality, chasing Pac-Man with different approaches. I mean, of course you remember that, right?
Yeah, but can you really like say them four personalities and how they chase Pac-Man, and even though they have their own names, is that really AI though?
Yes, because it should be noted here that not everyone actually shares the view of AI in games is a fair use of the word AI itself. Um, in early games, there's definitely an argument to be made for why early gaming AI perhaps a little bit overrated to be called AI. However, though, as the technology progresses and we trace back to its roots, it's most definitely worth to talk about this small AI wins in early video games. And you know what? Probably players were happy enough if the AI noticed them and started attacking them because they noticed their death
At all, probably.
at
Yeah,
all.
no,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, by the 90s and 2000s, with the rise of 3D games, it was becoming more necessary to incorporate smarter gaming AI to create a gameplay experience that immersed the player well into the game to add to its realism. In games like No One Lives Forever from 2000, players wanted AI that could use the environment to their advantage. So we started seeing AI that can take cover or even flip over furniture to create their own cover. Gaming AI is mostly associated with NPCs historically. However, in recent times, AI has certainly done a lot more for video games than just in the context of NPCs. And we'll discuss more about that later. But for now, let's take a look at how types of AI have influenced NPCs themselves.
Yeah, so using NPCs as an example, here's some different types. So, first one, rule based. So, perhaps the most basic, predetermined rules and conditions dictate the behavior of NPCs, such as if a player character is spotted, a rule for the NPCs to find and alert another NPC nearby, almost like if then. Yeah.
Yes.
We got finite state machines. This is when, for example, an NPC has different states, which are like different sets of behaviors or actions.
Hmm.
So that would happen in response to certain triggers or maybe actions that the player takes. So the NPC will behave differently depending on if it's like in a patrolling state, in an alerted state, in a aggravated state, if it's being lured currently by Ezio Auditore,
Mm.
anything like that, stealth and different states. No, but stealth games, yeah, that's the easy one to kind of take away from this one, isn't it? As example. Um, Next, we've got pathfinding AI. So this one is commonly used for NPCs to find the shortest way to a certain spot in the environment,
Mhm.
but can also be used for literal pathfinding to the player's goals on a map. Though also very straightforward in essence, really. It does hopefully provide intelligent and realistic movements by non-player characters to really immerse the player in the experience. They have to kind of act a little bit human as well. So it needs some kind of artificial intelligence, or at least it looks like it, even if it isn't, which is a fantastic trick a game developer can still pull off on you, even
Mhm.
if it is weak AI, if you know what I mean. It is still very like necessary, and for it to be kind of convincing,
So we're thinking, they're alive.
they're alive. Yeah, we got machine learning AI. This is a type of AI in gaming that would be, I think, tough to argue that it's not like genuine AI, in my opinion. So NPCs can learn from the player behavior to adapt and increase the challenge, as opposed to the more simple ways that we know from perhaps Space Invaders, where over a set period of levels or time,
Hmm.
the characters get faster, or you get less lives, or whatever. So that those are like really mechanical ways of doing it. But with machine learning AI, the NPC should actually adapt to exactly how you're playing. So
Hmm.
maybe like if you're constantly playing your open world action game in stealth mode, maybe the NPCs are going to learn you like that part, so they will be like a little bit more difficult in stealthy areas. But then like if you ever get caught, like you never really do action, maybe it'll take a little bit easier on you actually, because it might just be an example. I don't know if that actually happens like that, but that's kind of how I interpret machine learning AI, for NPCs anyway, as an example. Um, we got a couple more. So there's behavior trees, and that's very similar to finite state machines, but there's a more hierarchical structure. but they do allow for very complex decision making and adapt NPCs to changing conditions dynamically. And lastly, reinforcement learning. This is where NPCs can receive positive and negative feedback, just like humans do at work. So, of course, this works. NPCs, like in strategy games, for example, they could learn to prioritize resource gathering because for this specific match against that specific human player, it would increase its own chances of winning the game. But this is more how NPCs have used AI, historically speaking, and obviously things have massively changed now, yeah? So there's been definitely another big boom in AI, and it has, like many other places, completely changed the way people work. Um, AI technology as a whole has actually improved so drastically that video games incorporated technology now in many, many different ways. So there's NVIDIA graphics cards. They've used AI tech since 2018 using DLSS, which means deep learning super sampling,
Mhm.
to improve the image quality or resolution when the games themselves actually running like at a much lower resolution or the textures are less detailed. It can also generate fake frames in between real frames. So that's kind of like guessing what the next frame would be in between two real frames. You're just like, it's probably going to look a little bit like this. So it looks
Mm.
like so much more fluid than the computer's actually giving you right now.
Yeah, they're patching it in the middle, basically.
Yeah, it's awesome how that actually works. Of course, there's procedural content generation. So in early games, this has been used as a way to create randomly generated mazes or dungeons. Modern content generation can generate a lot more, though, including entire 3D levels, characters, any type of asset, really. Borderlands can create over 1 million unique guns and other equipment. No Man's Sky from 2018 features an impressive universe with only 18 quintillion planets with diverse terrain, weather, and plants. I mean, if you play the game, you're gonna be a little bit like, eye roll moment. But I mean, on paper, this is fact. This is true. Let's look at some more types. Player experience modeling is a type that seeks to model the gamer's experience by predicting the player's preferences, doing so by analyzing the player's competence and emotions. So, like a rage quit, for example. Yeah, try playing again tomorrow. Let's see if you can crack that last boss in Elden Ring. Yeah, we'll see. But obviously, let's look quite far outside the industry. So, or like on the outskirts, I think. Data mining and real time analytics. Global gamers can generate approximately 50 terabytes of data every single day. And this is information to improve the games, make better video games. AI can now read reviews, known as player sentiment analysis, and provide trend analysis to find common complaints or praise about the game. AI is used in detecting cheating in multiplayer games, of course,
Mhm.
support testing and debugging games by running AI simulations, and provide real time virtual assistants that can offer guidance to players based on normal language queries. And I think basically what I'm saying here is that video games have been impacted by AI in all sorts of ways. It's not just like we always had them inside the games,
Yeah.
they're also like everywhere around it now, too, like everywhere else.
So let's get into the advantages of using AI in video games. First one is actually what we touched on before regarding open world scheme like No Man's Sky. I mean, the worlds within games are becoming bigger and bigger, and the time and effort it takes to create them definitely increases as well. If we're talking about No Man's Sky, what was it, JP? 18 quintillion planets?
Yes, 18 quintillion.
That's a lot, right?
Say that 10 times fast.
Not gonna do that, but anyway, say that 18 quintillion faster.
Open world, so you're logging on ChatGPT in the morning. Would you please make me like a brand new Zelda-like game which incorporates some of my favorite Pokemon?
Oh,
5 seconds later, done. There you go.
boom, there you go. But you know what? That's true. That's where AI can take some of that heavy lifting away from developers. Imagine how long will it take to create 18 quintillion uniquely one by one. That's going to take a long time.
That's true. It comes back to the quality over quantity question at the moment, yeah. Do you really want a lot more stuff, but there's like a certain constraint to how unique everything is? Or
Yes.
do you want to like, this was like 100% made by the beautiful imagination of this perfect artist? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. And I guess that's really apparent in games like No Man's Sky, to be honest. Yeah. But procedurally generated content like this is not the same as generative AI, though. Procedurally generated content uses algorithms, predefined rules by developers that allow the game developers to control what is being generated. So, while No Man's Sky really is able to generate that 18 quintillion planets, each characteristics for that planet, like the color of the sky, for example, may be predefined to a certain set of colors, so they're not going to be completely random.
It must be so difficult for people to actually like draw a distinction between so where it's like this is just randomly generated stuff based on like a really big set of like possible things that can happen
Yeah.
and actual AI start, like where does one start and the other one end? Yeah, like difficult to say, isn't it? Especially in the context of open worlds. Yeah, this is probably why it's called AI a lot of the time because it's just able to fool you now. Like, meh, was this made by someone or was it like spat out by a generator? Yeah, you got no idea.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah,
But you know what? That's why, though, it's really important for developers to maintain some type of control over the content that's being generated to ensure that levels aren't being created which are, for example, impossible to beat, or accidentally allow generated side quests to create narrative plot holes. People will realize that very quickly. Yeah, there is no quality control in this.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
And it's really easy to go down the rabbit holes with AI. Open worlds aren't the only thing able to be procedurally generated. Like I mentioned before, there are also quests, challenges, equipment, characters. Their appearances can all be procedurally generated to offer astronomical numbers of unique content. The good thing is, this extends the game's overall lifespan and replayability. The game world can adapt dynamically to evolve based on the player's behavior. Truly generative AI is starting to appear in video games too. Take the mobile game Justice, which uses ChatGPT to generate the NPC dialogue.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's so nice though as well because in like massive multiplayer online games with those NPCs, you're used to like typing on your keyboard to chat to your players and your friends and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So if you communicate the same way with NPCs, it makes it so much more organic, actually, doesn't it? It really immerses you into that role playing aspect.
Yeah, obviously it needs certain rules to be applied within that to make sure that the conversation just doesn't go out of bounds, basically. But
Imagine
yes,
asking an NPC in a game, like, could you please book me my tickets for my next holiday? And they'll just go out and do that in the real internet for you.
can you suggest the best Excel formula for my problem right now? Yes, probably. It definitely still needs certain boundaries to be applied. Yeah, AI Dungeon is another example of generative AI. A text adventure PC and mobile game released at the end of 2019, which will generate an entire storyline for the player. I believe it released it used GPT 2. JP, you have anything to add about this? Because I know that you played this for a bit.
Yeah, so really interesting. It used GPT-2, so that's before ChatGPT came out, which is I think GPT-3 model, right?
Hmm.
So it kind of it was like a little bit early to the AI game actually. This game, but it is super cool. So it is a classic text-based adventure game with the twist that the story is random pretty much, but it does have some genres. So you can, for example, use the cyberpunk genre, and it'll start you off with some, this is where you are. You wake up in an alley and you have this in your hand, and you look out, and but it's generative, right? So, and even then, when you tell it to do stuff, you can also insert that into the generation. So you could always say like, "Oh, I reach into my pocket and I see your phone." And it does actually have to then try to compensate for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't know if that was the best example, really, but it is really cool in principle. I didn't get super hooked on it, but I've unfortunately never been into like text-based games too much. I still love them for what they are. But it was interesting. It beat the curve a little bit with the new AI boom.
Yeah, and I believe the current Ultra models make use of GPT-4 Turbo and Dolly 3. We'll link that on the description.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a free game for the well, it's a freemium game anyway.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about the advantages of generative AI compared to procedural generated. So generative AI has the ability to make NPCs act very natural, and traditionally everything an NPC does would have had to be created by hand, right? So like
Hmm.
their animations, textures, voice acting, NPCs could only do what they were programmed and designed by a developer to do, right? Um, Alexis Rowland, development director of LaForge, which is the Chinese branch of Ubisoft's R&D department, told CNN in 2023 LaForge launched Ghostwriter, a text generating tool designed to help writers create a greater variety of original dialogue for NPCs. And in 2022, it tested a new technology that helps to generate more realistic and natural gestures in NPCs that matches the tone and mood of their speech. Almost like AI acting, actually. Roland says it takes speech as input and generates body gesture as output. So we can imagine those NPCs expressing themselves with non scripted dialogues, having almost natural body animation synthesized from speech. Combining generative AI elements like dialogue and animation could create a fully fledged AI powered NPC that might have a little bit more natural and unpredictable behavior, he concludes. And lastly, why don't we look at it also as just a tool? Like, what kind of tools do AI give us? AI can support game development outside of the direct experience by the player. It can be thought of as a general tool with many different applications. Maxis, the company behind The Sims, is developing tools that can support game designers, eliminating repetitive tasks and enabling developers to work on more interesting problems, according to a spokesperson. And at LaForge, generative AI tools like Ghostwriter or ZooBuilder, a 3D animator that animates four-legged animals based on videos, could help designers accelerate the most tedious part of their process so that they can really focus on the more creative and interesting parts. And I totally get that. It completely makes sense. Let's say you're designing a golf game, one of the few last things you want to like do is probably add like some little birds somewhere in the background, the far distance, just because it's one of them little finishing touches. Yeah, if you can get generative AI to like do 90% of that for you, and then you just give it the focus where it matters, how much easier does that make your video game designs, yeah, as a whole? Yeah.
Yeah, and how many more games can we play, right? With more time efficient building the game itself. Yeah, win-win, to
A-
be honest.
AI should by all means really improve video games after a little bit more time still to really get to the full effect of AI. For example, it should make it cheaper to make some games. It could also mean that you need a smaller team sometimes, which is great because now, like a single person or like just two or three friends, they can make video games the way they may be envisioned without having to learn things that they might not be good at naturally. So, like, I'm okay at making point and click adventure games, like setting them up, but I really do not do well drawing. So, if I wanted to make my own point and click game, well, either I learn to draw, I get someone to draw for me, or I ask an AI to do it. What other options is there at the end of the day?
But not to diminish game developers' involvement in all of these games. Obviously, experience matters. And, that's where we still need these people to do what they do within the game developers' company. Because, what? AI also has its limitation, right? What are they not so competent at? Well, AI is still not able to offer a truly unique experience, being based on patterns and algorithms that are being fed to it. It doesn't truly think outside the box like human developers can. To make games more meaningful and memorable, they require a certain emotional touch. Human developers can draw on their very personal subjective experience to create a game that touches the player in a specifically intended way rather than just creating any game whatsoever, basically. It's just more personal touch.
So, what's in AI's future? The relatively recent AI boom, starting with OpenAI's ChatGPT, has not yet impacted the game world as fully as it will in the coming years and decades, but it allows developers to dream bigger than ever before. Development of GTA 6, slated for release in 2025, development for that started as long as 2014. So, would Rockstar make the very risky decision to try and work in a brand new and largely untested technology into its games midway through their development cycle, for example? And that's kind of how we have to think about games take so long to make. Let's give it until the games that are starting development today, next year, and when they then come out, that's when we'll truly feel the impacts of it. Games that will break new boundaries in gaming AI are likely only just being fully considered for development now, or very recently, but we are excited for the future already. So thank you for joining us, Player One. We hope you enjoyed this episode delivered to you by two humans.
Yes, not to I don't think.
We are the robots. Dum 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 dum.
Yeah, I don't think AI can be as annoying as us, to be honest.
Probably not. No, not me. Definitely not.
But yes, player one, have you seen any exciting AI developments in gaming? You want to share any cool stories that you might have? Let us know by dropping us a message on our website, gaminghistory.club. New episodes of Gaming History Club are released every second Wednesday, so make sure you subscribe and follow us on our social media as well. We're on Instagram and Facebook as Gaming History Club.
Come back in a couple of weeks, Player One, when we look at just how micro are microtransactions exactly. See ya.